I'm joined now by one of the world's, or one of the UK's top female entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in the top 100 at least, Claudine Reid, who is joining me now to have a look at the international newspaper headlines. Let's start with this day. APC moves to stave off rift over National Assembly leadership. How important, Claudine, is it for a democracy such as Nigeria, quite a recent democracy at least, for the opposition party, the APC party, to choose a new leader and for that process to go smoothly?
I mean, we've been watching Nigeria really quite closely over the last couple of months, and they've just elected a new leader, and so it's going to be very important for the country. There's lots of instability, lots of issues around Boko Haram and all the terrorist activity there. So in order to kind of try and ensure they have the good traction that they need to make, I think it's going to be a very important move for them.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the National. This is a UAE paper, United Arab Emirates paper. Death toll in Nigeria, bombing rises to 45. This is a suicide bombing in the markets in northeastern Nigerian town of Yola, which has risen to 45. No claims of responsibility yet, but a lot of people pointing their fingers at Boko Haram. And it's easy to think, isn't it, Claudine, that Boko Haram has been pushed out of northeastern Nigeria. We've obviously heard so many success stories in the build-up to the election about the army winning over areas and taking back towns and cities that Boko Haram had taken. But incidents like this shows just what a deadly force they still are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, since we had the election of the new president, there's been an increase in attacks, and so again, it's really shocking. It almost seems like there's no sort of no let-up. There's no slowing down to their attacks and what they're looking for. But it's very tragic. We've got 45 people killed in a situation. We still have missed the issue of the girls that were kidnapped, and Boko Haram just seem to be running roughshod over the country.
Having said that, hopefully Muhammadu Buhari, with his reputation that he's kind of been elected on, not only to clamp down on corruption, but he's also a former dictator, a former military dictator, obviously a former military man, that he will clamp down on things like this, whether it be Boko Haram or any other people carrying out these attacks. Yeah,
I mean, it's an interesting point when we say clamp down in terms of what will that actually look like. Nigeria's been trying to get a rein hold on Boko Haram for a very, very long time, even in the previous government, and they've had no real successes. They still seem to be able to go in and, carry out atrocities as this.
Yeah, and also there's been obviously recently accusations that the army themselves, the military themselves, have been responsible for many killings and people dying in custody as well. But anyway, let's move on to the Greek paper that is called Kathimerini. Tsipras dismisses lenders' proposals but sees deal soon is the headline on the main paper there. This is the Prime Minister saying lenders' proposals are unrealistic, but that he's still positive and believes the government is close to an agreement. Greece always seems to be more optimistic and positive than the countries bailing it out, such as Germany and other EU countries. How realistic do you see it that this deal will be signed and will go through?
Gosh, this is an interesting one. I think a lot remains to be seen. They owe Germany, I think something in the region of £56 billion, and they've got a £300 million payment to make, in the next couple of days. It's always good to remain optimistic, but then, the truth will see its way out. They've experienced a number of challenges over the last couple of years, and I think, Prime Minister is doing his best to try and work his way out of that challenging situation.
They kind of don't have any other choice, do they, in Greece, and the Prime Minister and the government there have to remain positive. Otherwise,
absolutely,
in terms of keeping their economy, what little economy they have going, and for their own people in Greece, they need to appear to be on top of things.
Of course. I mean, otherwise the next sort of stop to this will be civil unrest, and that's the last thing that they want to do. So trying to remain optimistic about the economy and trying to attract as much investment as they possibly can, given the current parameters that they're working under. I think it's a very difficult time, but let's see how they'll fare.
Yeah, let's move on then to the China Daily, which has a picture of the boat, the Eastern Star, being brought upright in the water. The death toll, as we mentioned earlier in the programme, of this capsized boat has reached 331, making it China's deadliest maritime disaster in nearly 7 decades. Should or could more have been done to prevent this tragedy from happening?
Gosh, it's an interesting one, Simon. I mean, it was the boat capsized. It ran into a storm at the very early hours of the morning, and you look at a disaster of this magnitude and think, what could we have done to prevent such a thing? And it could almost be a force majeure, but in terms of what more could have been done, I think that's an interesting one. When the boat actually rode into the storm, perhaps there could have been faster response times. I think that the story goes on to say they've only found 14 people alive out of 456 people who are actually on the boat. It's a very, very tragic situation. The town, incidentally, has responded very, very well with the cab drivers, you know, offering support, bringing food to the relatives and carrying them to and from the actual scene. But again, a very, very tragic story.
Yeah, absolutely. You say 14 survivors. When one of the survivors is the captain of the boat, I think questions have got to be asked, haven't they, about response times or measures on board in terms of evacuation, because if the captain's getting out there, you know, the captain should really be the last person off the boat and should be, so I'm sure, anyway, you know, I'm sure investigation and a full sort of and thorough look into what happened will find out what happened there. The Dominion Post in New Zealand, French crash kills rugby hero. This is a huge story in New Zealand, of course, the former All Black Jerry Collins and his wife being killed in a car crash in France a few days ago. Just as moving, really. Their young daughter is critically ill in hospital, and obviously, if she does survive, she'll grow up without her parents. Yeah,
I mean, very, very tragic story. I think, you know, I'm not very much a rugby fan, but know who are speaking about, who the Collins family were speaking about today. Very tragic circumstances, you know, in terms of the crash. And it's always very tragic when you look at a child growing up without their parents.
Yeah, and it also shows, doesn't it, that we've heard all these stories about a plane going missing, a Malaysian plane going missing, still not being found. You know, the one going down recently in the Alps, which was a different circumstances, but it shows statistically how dangerous driving and travelling by car can be.
Absolutely. Compared to plane crashes, yes, I think those are one of the highlights that the reporter pulled out this morning, in terms of it's still statistically more dangerous to drive than it is to fly or take trains.
And it also shows, doesn't it, that this happened a few days ago, and it's the weekend, so obviously a big story on the weekend when a lot of sport happens, but in a country like New Zealand, which is quite a small country in terms of its population, but how important rugby is there, certainly, for everyone to sort of to come together and pay tribute to this player.
Yeah, I'm sure that they'll probably hold him as a national hero of some sort. I think it seems like it's in order. He's done a lot of raise a profile of rugby, I think, across the nation internationally. I mean, I'm not a rugby fan, and even I know who the family are, but I think something most definitely will be done in terms of celebrating his success and his contribution to the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Claudine, all very interesting. Thank you very much indeed for coming in today.